Welcome, everybody, to DAT Poker Podcast, episode 143, presented by Daniel Negreanu's Masterclass of Poker. It is May 26, 2023. I'm your host, Dave Schwartz, alongside producer extraordinaire, getting his wings out and doing all kinds of poker stuff. This is Roscoe P. Coltrane.
He fell for it, but he had a set.
Fell for it and had a set. Terrence Chan, T, how are you, sir?
Doing great. We're approaching World Series time where I hope to be berated by Phil Hellmuth at some point because it probably means I did something right. So, yeah, I've got.
But he will get
berated. It's also allergy season up in the Okanagan, so if I sneeze and rub my eyes all over this podcast, I apologize in advance. But
you're excused.
I'm excited to do this one, the last one before the World Series. So let's fucking make it a good one.
Daniel Negreanu in Las Vegas. Daniel, this is Christmas Eve for poker players, but I would say that this week has been a bit of a tragedy, and it's sort of hard to get excited about all the things that are coming up because poker lost.
Well, you're going there first. I was going to do an upbeat joke, and you went with sad right up.
I know. Well, we have to.
Hold on. Say how you doing? How you doing? I was right. So these are dream pops. Okay, before we get to that, these are called dream pops, and they're dreamy. And I'm starting my World Series of Poker diet right this minute. We're a little bit of chocolate, okay? And now we can go into the sad stuff.
No, well, hang on. Let's continue with this. What do you weigh right now?
I ended up getting down to about 160. So by the end of
160,
I'll be 170.
You think you're only gaining 10 pounds? That's pretty good.
I mean,
yeah. Okay.
No, it's not a good-looking 10 pounds, but it's 10 pounds.
As I mentioned, poker lost, honestly, it's only icon, right? I mean, I think when especially poker players think about poker's icon, poker players think of Doyle Brunson and the lifespan of Doyle across, the Texas road gambling right from the beginning to the World Series of Poker all the way through, playing the high stakes his whole life, really has no match. And despite what you may think of as politics or whatever, maybe
specifically.
Yeah, for sure. I certainly
none of us got blocked by Doyle.
I
asked him to block.
But aside from all that, right? Like, I mean, you're going to have disagreements with people's points of view. I'm sure a million people disagree with on mine, so that's fine, no problem. But it's where credit is due. Doyle changed the game. Doyle was the face of poker for decades. And, when you think back about Doyle's life, he passed away at 89 last week. The most amazing thing to me is, there was a lot of old gamblers like, Daniel, Terrence. We started playing poker in the 90s and stuff. And a lot of these guys were still hanging around. Like I played poker with Puggy Pearson and I played with some of the other guys. And they were a shadow of this legend that, you would have thought they were. They weren't the shark. They weren't the person that you feared at the table. They were meek. They weren't very good at the game, even at that time. But Doyle, here we are, 2000, into the 2020s, playing in the highest games in the world and holding his own is absolutely amazing, considering how long he'd been doing it and his health and all that kind of stuff. And when I look back, I just marvel at the longevity the guy had to be at the top of the game. And I don't think we have any match anywhere close to that. And Daniel, obviously you had a lot of experience with Doyle, and I wanted to sort of, throw it to you first to get a bit of reaction on sort of what you look at Doyle's legacy as.
Yeah, well, Doyle would approve of his chocolate, that's for sure. I'll say this. Doyle, for those that knew him or came across him, was universally loved. Yeah, universally. There was my own wife, Amanda. Her favorite player, and there's video of it, is Doyle Brunson. She loves Doyle. Doyle is adorable to her, hilarious, so personable, funny guy. Like, he's obviously really, really smart. And I think that's probably something that people don't realize about Doyle. When Doyle came on the scene as a Texas road gambler, most of the guys that, were pros or cutting their teeth, they weren't educated people, right? Doyle was, highly educated. Doyle was on his way to becoming a Minneapolis Laker. He was drafted in the NBA, and he came from an educational background, which led him to do something that was so before his time. Like, I wonder how many kids today who play online and play with solvers realize, Doyle came up with an idea to deal out cards hand by hand with the freaking old school paper and pen and write ace, king, beat, deuces. Boom. boom, boom. Do that 100, 1,000 times so that he could like figure out a way to have an edge. Imagine like the simplicity of that and how you somebody scoff, but like he thought of that. He had the foresight. Because I remember even when I started in the late 90s, there were people that were willing to bet ace king offsuit against ace king suited. And I'm not kidding. Like they're willing to bet it because they thought there's 2 flush draws, whatever the case may be. But Doyle was so ahead of his time in that regard and always in the highest stakes games. He was like, one of my favorite quotes he said was, because he's a degen gambler, right? He says, I'm a degenerate gambler. We all are. We just found something we can beat. And there's a lot of truth to that. There's a lot of truth to that from like our generation.
Yeah.
Like you just gamble like crazy, but oh, thank God I found something I can actually win at. Because Doyle is notoriously, he would make fun of it. Like this, he invested in, the Titanic, give up label and Finding Noah's Ark. And he got hoodwinked in a whole bunch of business ideas and stuff. So that was not his forte. But till the end, he was gambling. He's betting the golf. He's betting the sports. He's playing high stakes. And I think when you think of the word legend in poker, he is it. Okay, just it, right? This is a guy who's seen it all, literally. He created it all. He's playing up to the age of 89, right? And people say, who's the GOAT? Well, longevity plays a big role there, right? Someone was asked this question, Phil Ivey or Doyle Brunson. I said, well, listen, at their peak, I don't know, because I never got to play with Doyle at his peak, right? But I do know one thing. Nobody's even come close to matching the ability for him to do this over decade and decade and decade and seeing all these up-and-comers come, and he still competes, and he still does well. And I tell you what, and he said this, he's always learning. I played with him last year, or not too long ago. He was getting better. I'm not kidding. There were spots in No Limit where he was like playing better than he had before. So, I mean, you just got, like, if I had a hat on, I'd take it off to him because, he's like a hero to so many in the book community up in that regard. And like I said, the thing is, like you were sort of talking, like Twitter he's out there on Twitter coming out with Doyleisms and stuff like that. And
Frank, did you guys see his last tweet? How good is the last tweet?
The Mike Madison one?
Yeah, he puts a I've got it here. What's that?
That wasn't actually him.
Well, I'm aware you can't tweet after you're dead. But do you know who it was? Was it Todd? Like who was it?
I think it was Todd. Yeah, I think.
Okay. So I'll read it right now. It says, Doyle, this is I guess a day after the news of his passing has been made public. It says, just cashed in my chips, but before I walk out that door one last time, I just wanted to tell you how much I love this poker world. I didn't want to go yet, was actually planning to play some events this summer. And then the second tweet is, but when I saw the markup that Mike Madison was charging for the 10K Omaha 8 or better event, my heart just gave out. Be kind to one another. I'll save you all a seat in Dolly's game in heaven. So I love that, Todd or whoever it was, or hey, maybe even Doyle had it saved in the drafts and say, hit the send on this one when he had to go, was just a shot at Mike. And that's what we'll remember for. But what a sense of humor. I have a big collection of the, because the thing about Doyle is that's so amazing is that, like, if you play poker and if you were Daniel and you played with him a bunch of times, maybe every individual meeting wasn't as special, but I think almost every poker player remembers the first time they met Doyle or they played with Doyle. I certainly do. And so Twitter was a wash of, all the memories that people had individually. Can I read my favorite one?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
All right. So it's from Scott Seaver, a guy who's played a lot with him, one of the biggest crushers of our generation for sure. Scott Seaver says, one thing I'll always remember is the biggest compliment in my mind that he ever paid me. That time when he said of everyone in my generation, he thought only me and Jason Mercier would be able to make it as a Texas road gambler and survive and thrive. I still think about it. And then, so that's great, right? That's great. But even it gets better. Geralibus responds to that tweet and says, you're like the 20th person I've heard tell the same story. Part of being a good Texas road gambler is knowing how to handle your marks. And that was great because I could totally see that coming. Ike Haxton says, when he told me I wouldn't have made it, I think he meant it.
No, he definitely told the truth there.
That presents a great image itself of Ike Haxton as a 1960s road gambler. That's an image. That's a reality TV show I would watch.
Yeah. I think I wish people had an opportunity to really see like sort of the behind the scenes of two guys that are legends in different ways, obviously Doyle and Phil Ivey, because to me, they represented brothers who bicker and fight all the time. Like, you have a brother, you just want to punch him out, and then you always fight over every last dollar. Those two bickering were like the odd couple of all odd couples. And, there was like sort of a deep admiration and respect they had for each other that I really did. I felt like they really like kind of loved each other, but at the same time, they wanted to kill each other at all times. Like, they had nicknames for each other. I think Doyle called him the Black Mamba, named after Kobe or something like that. But he always had respect for Ivy. I think he just loved beating him, and so did Phil. Like, they all wanted to find a way to get, like, I remember going to golf with them at Shadow Creek. No joke. Tee time.
This is my favorite story. I've heard this story, and I was going to say, can you please tell this story about them trying to set a line?
Yeah, tee time was 10:45 a.m. We're at Shadow Creek. We're supposed to be there 10:45. I show up to the putting green. I'm hitting balls. Everybody's there. Doyle and E-Dog was there too, right? Doyle was like, I need 5 from you, Eric. Eric's like, no, I can't give you 5, Doyle. I'll give you 4.5. Doyle's like, not 5. No. So if Eric goes, hits a few putts, he's like, Doyle, I'm not giving you that much. He's like, walks back. Eric says, okay, right? So that negotiation lasted all about 6 minutes. Now, Doyle and Phil are negotiating over 4 and 4.5. Okay. And they're fighting like cats and dogs.
Half a shot. And
now it is 3 p.m. and we finally decide, I guess we're not going to be golfing. So we just all waiting around because they wouldn't budge. I mean, these are two absolute D-gen gamblers. Phil Ivy's gambling stories, legendary. Doyle Brunson's gambling stories, legendary. But the hell you're going to get an extra half a shot against me. You're not taking the best of it against me. Hell no. I don't mind giving the best of it to the crap stable, but you're not getting me. So those were like, I just appreciated the fact that I could ride along and watch it.
Yeah, talk a little bit about, I mean, I know you haven't played high stakes mix a lot in the last few years, but you have Phil Ivey, who's, if not in the prime of his career, not that far removed from it. And you have guys like Doyle, but he's the oldest guy in this room by a long shot. And you said he was getting sharper, he was getting better as he get age, but deep down he had to know that it's hard to keep up with these 35, 40, 45-year-old guys. Like, talk about how what Doyle's attitude was towards playing, because I mean, he always liked to say, it's not, we don't stop playing because we get old because we stop playing. And is that just why he was kept in the game? Like, he just needed the action because, he probably, let's face it, wasn't a big favorite in those games, but what was his attitude towards playing in the game at that point?
I'll tell you what, Doyle has always been very incredibly self-aware. I remember over a decade ago, him saying that when he starts to lose it, like Johnny Moss did, because at one point, Johnny Moss, was the best player in the world. And then he got old and he no longer was. And so he
was a fish in the 2040 game at the Horseshoe, basically.
If you're playing in your 90s, you're probably not. Yeah. Doyle always was cognizant of that and said, he would play smaller if he ever felt like, he was losing an edge. But the thing is even though Doyle would like misplay the wrong game sometimes, misread his cards, all that stuff, his instincts. There's a hand that Jason Kuhn played against him in the main event that is so epic. I said to Jason, I sent it to him just yesterday. I was like, Jason, this is like the bet. You got completely owned by a legend, and it's like a badge of honor to have this happen to you, right? It was just I'll make the hand, the long story short, but the board on the turn was King, Queen, 10, Deuce, right? And Doyle had Ace, Jack with the Jack of Hearts. There's 2 hearts on board, okay? The river's a heart, so he has the Jack of Hearts. Doyle had the nuts straight. Doyle checks. Kuhn bets like 2/3 pot. With the Jack of Hearts, Doyle just looks at him, whatever, throws it in the muck. I mean, you can't get, like, that is not a theoretically good fold, against a guy like Kuhn, but he just folded,
especially against a guy like Kuhn. Like, if it's some guy who's quaking in his boots because he's never played the main event before, blah, 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 like, the money means a lot. Sure, you can lay down that hand.
Like, Kuhn is one of the guys that's actually going to have bluffs there, right?
Yep.
And, a lot of them. And he's going to bet worse hands, too. Like, that's the thing. He's going to bet 2 pair and all this. So, yeah. So Doyle was sharp to the end and was in the action till the end. Like I said, yeah. I mean, it's just amazing to see. Like I it was high stakes poker. I played with him probably in December, and I was like, damn, he's making some moves that I'd never seen before. So that's just incredible. And like I said, he was really a gentleman. Like people know. Like, so here's the thing, right? Adam, you were born and raised in Toronto. In an era now, right? He was born in Texas, right? Yeah. He grew up in the 50s and the 60s. And the way in which we, got around and talked to each other is very, very different. Like, I remember he wrote a card player blog, a card player article, and he was talking about a guy he played with in the 70s named Nate. Okay? Well, Nate had his own name for himself Nate was a black man, and he used the N-word Nate, right? So Nate called himself that, N-word. And Doyle just put it out there on Card Player. And people are like, what's wrong with you? You can't say that word. He's like, that was the name. You know what I mean? Like, he just didn't, there's a lot of that stuff when you don't grow up in that area, you sort of learn. But overall, like, his kindness to people, the way that he interacted, he always meant well. He never meant harm to anybody. He had his views.
Yeah.
He was a Christian man, and he had, certain views about the world and whatnot. But Glenn, like I said, as a person, as a man, if you put all that stuff aside and you don't focus on that, which is probably why they say, at the dinner table, let's not talk politics and religion. Like, he's just a great guy to have around, and just a gentleman in every way.
One of the things I really loved to always hear about was, obviously I'm a golfer and I'm a gambler, and I loved hearing about all the high stakes golf games. And for Doyle, to be with his crutch and to go out there and, Doyle, as you said, Daniel was an athlete in his youth, but to go out there and play sky high on the golf course, barely, having a hard time getting around, but he got the spot where he could tee it up and he would still go, battle it out. It's,
oh God, I tell you what, it's like, it was partly me, because when I started to play golf, like Chip Reese had a ACL tear. He had no knee. He came out to start playing golf. Doyle couldn't walk. He came out on a crutch to play with me, right? Literally, he would drive the cart up, get his crutch, go up to the ball. He would tee it up, because we played Doyle's rules, which was, he couldn't hit the ball otherwise. He could tee it up from anywhere, bunker or not, and he would play from the ladies' tees. And I promise you not, he would just hit it about 170 right down the middle, doop, 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 doop. Then he'd hit it another 170, doop, 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 on the green, doop, doop, doop. And he had a great putting stroke, and he had like a good feel, and he would 2-putt par. And it's like, okay, there's your 80. You should just, how are you going to beat? He was never in trouble. It was like, but again, he was smart enough to know, how to get a game and how to beat it. He could figure out how to beat it.
Yeah, that's great. So we have the Chip Reese tournaments. Thoughts on naming a tournament at the World Series of Poker after Doyle, and specifically the main event? I think if anybody deserves to have their name on the main event, probably Doyle Brunson. I don't know, Terrence, thoughts on adding that to the main event?
It's almost, because when I think it's almost not enough, in a weird way, because Doyle was more than No Limit Hold'em, even though he very literally wrote the book on No Limit Hold'em, and it was his claim to fame, and he was, main event champion. Which, by the way, like I when Doyle passed, I started doing some reading. I didn't know this. You guys probably know this because you're better at the poker historian. He could have won the main event in its third year, but he actually intentionally threw the tournament. You guys know this, right? Yeah. Like he lost it to Slim on purpose because he didn't want to be famous, and he didn't want the small town Christians looking down at him for being a gambler. So he could have been. And the funny thing is that doesn't affect his legacy at all. Imagine having a career so illustrious that adding another main event win would not have made any difference. Like, Daniel, if you won the main event, that would like elevate an already great career to like another level. But anyway, it's almost not enough, because like when I think about Doyle, I don't just think of him winning the main event. I think of him just being, playing at the highest stakes in Bobby's Ruins and all these different games, and playing into his old age. And it's almost not even enough. So my thought on the matter was, instead of naming a tournament after him, was presenting a trophy for the player of the year. And because the player of the year for the World Series of Poker, as Daniel knows, he chases it every year. That really is like a really strong representation of strength in a variety of different formats, endurance, all of these qualities that Doyle did possess. And now we can quibble about the scoring system and whether maybe it rewards volume too much. But I think, to me, that's the answer. I think there should be a trophy for Player of the Year, and I think that should be the Doyle Brunson Trophy. And I think it's appropriate. We have precedent with the Chip Reese Trophy in the PPC. I think this would be the right honor for Doyle, in my opinion. That's sort of my thoughts.
I don't disagree with you. I will say this: this is not enough, like you said. About that. The idea that I have is not enough, but it's definitely the one that Doyle fits. And the Dealer's Choice event, right? Mm-hmm. There was a game that Doyle, even to his late 70s, 80s, it was called Doyle Says, right? So like changing the name from Dealer's Choice to Doyle Says. And essentially what that was, Doyle would play anybody he wants. Anybody who wants to play him, he'd play him heads up. But it's Doyle Says what game we play. So he would make up a game on the spot, 6-card Omaha, Omaha, 7s are wild, whatever the case may be. Like Doyle would could call whatever he wanted. We called it Doyle Says, and you could challenge any man in any land. So that's not enough, though, like you said, you know. And I'm thinking about something grandiose. I don't think it would be disrespectful to just name a random 10K, you know, after Doyle. Like, he does have the WPT one, I believe, that was named after him, and the Chip Reese Trophy. I mean, it wouldn't even be crazy to call it the Chip and Doyle Trophy. You sort of add them because they really were a pair. You know, they were tied at the hip.
All right. Speaking of the World Series of Poker, it is Christmas Eve, as I mentioned before. The entire poker world is on edge, getting excited. Next week we do start. We're 72 hours away from the kickoff of the World Series of Poker with both the dealer's choice and the 25Ks. Is it the six max? I can't remember. It's six max. Yeah. 25K starting on two. So we're so close.
You said dealer's choice, but what you meant to say was casino employees. You got that.
Sorry, casino employees. Yeah. The traditional kickoff to the World Series of Poker with those two events now, adding the 25K. Obviously, Daniel, you've been looking forward to this for a long time. Terrence, you're going to fly down. The rest of the poker world is going. We've got the 25K fantasy that everybody's looking at. Who's playing? How many events are you going to play? Just looking around it, and it's everybody's got a fresh start. It's time to get going.
Nobody's stuck.
Nobody's stuck. Everybody can buy into the first event.
That's why everybody's excited, because nobody's stuck.
So, Daniel, I want to get your thoughts first on the anticipation it's taken to get here, and are you ready to go? Obviously, I think you probably are, is the answer. But I know you weren't feeling great for the last little while, but you're ready to go now.
Yeah, so this felt like the longest winter in Vegas we've ever had. It was just cold outside. I'm like, when the hell is this going to end, you know? And I honestly feel like the last 6 weeks or 8 weeks, I've been twiddling my thumbs, feeling like, when the hell is the World Series going to get here, right? So I was doing my thing, and then I got sick, like you said. So do I feel like ready? No, absolutely not. But I am ready to play. You know what I mean? I'm going to go in there with what I got. Like, I'm not sick anymore. I feel better. But it's hard to be ready for 7 weeks. I'm as ready as I can be, all things considered. And it's funny because I'm going to be doing the vlog again, of course. And that's the thing. It's like, man, I haven't done this in a while. Do I remember how? I mean, it's going to be like riding a bike. I'm sure I do it every year. But just getting the whole machine started, getting on a schedule and getting everything set up. I went down to Paris, I put the money in there. I'll do the draft. We got hockey games in between, so that's a little bit.
That's what I wanted to ask you, actually. First thing, obviously, you're a huge Knights fan. Canadians, we all love hockey. Your Knights are looking like they're going to make it to the Stanley Cup final. Obviously, that's getting ahead of ourselves, 3-1 up in the series against Dallas. But how much is that going to, kind of, oh, fuck, I want to go, maybe it's game, 6 at home or 7 at home, whatever game it may be, the clinching one. But, it's also the day of this tournament that I want to play. What are you thinking?
Well, there's no choice. I'm 100% prioritizing World Series events, right? So the way that I'm going to work it is like this. If there's, let's say, a game 6, there's a game 5 tomorrow, I'm not going to not play the event today in case I make day 2. You know what I mean? That's not going to happen. I'm going to play. So if I'm still in an event, that means I can't go to the game. The only time I can see, let's say, for example, it's not going to happen now, I don't think, because, they didn't win the last game. But for example, if the May 31st was game 1, I would play the 25K 6 max on the 30th. If I happen to bust by 5 p.m. the next day, there's a 1,500 dealer's choice the next day. I would late reg that, right? So I can still do that because the game started at 5 p.m. and most of the events I play start at 2, and late reg is either a full, till the next day or late that evening. So that's the way I would look at it. I'll just play it by ear. I'll save myself a seat, and but again, I'm not like, the World Series is number 1 for me. I've actually, it's weird because it's not the first time we made the finals. Maybe if it was, it would be different, but it's like, there
wasn't a World Series on the first time because of the COVID.
Well, there was a Super High Roller Bowl for me.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah. I'm up on NHL.com, and they posted the schedule for if it's Vegas. If Vegas wins tomorrow, Game 7 would be, of course, in Vegas. They would have home ice. It would be Friday, June 16th, which is the day of the 250K at the World Series. Now, you can register on day 2 for that. So the only situation I think that you would miss it is if you were in day 2 of the 10K triple draw the previous day because
well, based on what you said, it sounds like I'll miss it either way. I'm not going to max late reg to 250K.
You're not going to max late reg to 250K. Okay, so you'll be watching on a tablet or something like that.
Maybe we'll see.
Game 7.
We'll see how it plays out. We'll see how the series is going, but I expect to do well, and I expect to be grinding.
All right.
Spoiler: the Vegas Knight fans, Terrence, when they it's just another fucking Stanley Cup.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Well, that's why people ask me, Leafs or Toronto. I said I feel bad for people in Toronto because, like, first of all, they've been diehard Knight fans, and it's like the last time they won was 1967. The last time they won a playoff series was 20 years ago, right? And in Vegas, the team's been around like this is year 7.
Spoiled.
They've been a contender every single year, from the get-go. So, it feels like Vegas fans, they can't really pull out the violin and say, oh my God, it's been so hard. No, it hasn't.
Yeah.
You've been if you're a Leaf fan and you know what it's like, in Toronto, but you're in Vancouver too. You guys have
2011. I skipped like a big chunk of the World Series to fly to Boston and watch the games in Boston and watch the fucking Canucks get blown out 8-0 and have people throwing popcorn at us for the entire.
That's great.
Pouring beers on our heads after
an 8-0 game. They're just like
an 8-0. Yeah, it was an 8-0 game. We got more abuse than if we would have won.
No, we got abuse because Aaron Rome ended Nathan Horton's career in Game 3. Remember that? That's when we got beers poured on our head in Boston. Anyways, Daniel, let's talk about the 25K fantasy. It looks like this is going to be the biggest year on record. You've been doing it for a dozen or so years. Well, maybe there was a year off or something in there, but it's been going for a while. This seems like the one that's going to get the biggest, upwards of 20 people or 20 teams. Putting up the 25K. You've added some rules where, as you go along, you tweak these things, right? It's fantasy, and you can see what works and what doesn't work. And it looks like you've made a couple of rule changes. I think we talked about them last time, but there's a list of people that you're not going to allow to be drafted.
Yeah, no question about it. Before I get to that, so normally what I do around this time of year is I'm calling everybody who's done it. I'm texting, hey, we want to do the draft this year. Because I'm trying to get the numbers up to 12, right? I didn't do any of that this year. I didn't call anybody because everybody's been reaching out to me. Not only the regulars who come, but a whole group of new people that are flying in from Brazil, from Europe. I've had random people who said, like, hey, is there a way I can do it over the, I have a list of like 22 potential teams that have said they'll do it. Now, generally when that happens, I factor about 2 to 3 of those won't, so I'm certain this will be the biggest one we've ever had. And I expect maybe 19 to 20. Which is going to change the draft in many ways. And speaking of changing the draft, to answer your question, so, in past years, like last year, for example, Chris Vitch tweeted, I'm not playing any World Series this year if I got family stuff, right? Everybody knew except Ryan Reese. Ryan Reese said, Chris Vitch for $1. He got stuck with him, right? So on one side of the coin, people say, well, listen, that's your own fault, do your research, right? That's not what this is about. It's not the spirit of this thing. We don't want people leaving with a bad taste in their mouth. And this happens every year where somebody drafts somebody like that. We had, Gypsy the Russian one year. He drafted like David Shue or something, and, he's not coming, so just feels bad for side bets. So this year what we've done, or at least what I'm trying to do, is I'm creating a list of people that I know have expressed they're not going to play. And so those players will not be eligible to be bid on because what I don't want to happen, for example, let's say Terrence, tweets out, guys, I'm not playing any World Series poker. And then he tells me, it's like, actually, I'm playing full schedule. Right. So then everyone doesn't bid on Terrence and I go, Terrence for $1, right? So then, you can finagle them that. If people have expressed publicly that they're not playing this year, they're not coming, they are on that list. There's also 2 names on the list, Jake and Ali, that are on the commissioner void list, and I'm the commissioner. And from a moral perspective, I think that, Ali was drafted last year. I don't want to put people in that spot, right? Where you have to make a decision between what's financially the best move for your thing or like, do you really want to draft that guy? Because it's that guy, right? So just make it easy on everybody and say you can't. And I'll reveal that. And then before the draft starts, I'll ask if anybody wants to add anybody to the list, that if they want to do that, they don't have to, of course. But I try to come up with a reasonable list of that and let the cards fall where they may.
It was really confusing because like your first tweet that put up like, hey, these are the people who are ineligible to draft. It's Jake Schindler, Ali Surovich, and then like a bunch of people who just said that they weren't going to play. And then it made everybody think, Wait, are these guys scumbags now? Like,
I messed
what?
that up. I did.
Yeah, you did. You can
I
take
messed that
ownership
up.
of
I mean,
that.
listen, I didn't.
Yeah.
I had no. There's nothing wrong with the list. Like, people
Yeah.
think, like, it's not what it says, but like the last tweet I put separate. I said Commissioner.
Yeah, I see that now. It made 24th. It
There's a
was
whole
just
bunch of people
confusing.
like, what did Eugene Kachalov do? I'm like,
Right.
nothing, you know, it's a great guy.
He's not show up is what he did. Are you like, so you asked,
One
you'd
other
asked,
thing too. One other rule
Yeah.
change. Sorry, we added, because actually this was David Baker's idea. This didn't really make sense at this point. You know, the casinos employees event doesn't count. The ladies event doesn't count. The seniors events don't count, right? And then we thought about it more and like, why not?
why not?
Who cares? It's not like ours as a player of the year component, right? It's not like, you know, any player who does well is like, it just changes the value. So now if you have someone like Barbara Enright, who is like working at, you know, Gardines in California, who also plays the seniors event and the ladies event, well, you know, all of a sudden she goes up in value, right?
JJ Lou for $1.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So yeah, we just felt like, why not? You know, it actually does. It actually does, I think, have some equity, and, you know, especially the depth of this draft, in making it more likely that you should draft a woman. Like, and there's a couple that come to mind for me that, you know, if they play the ladies event and they're playing a full schedule and they're very good, you know, like maybe they're worth.
Maria has to be the most obvious one, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's a couple. There's, of course, you know, well, I don't want to name the other ones because I'll get
Sure.
on my list. But I'll tell you this much. I have more women on my draft list this year than ever, because again, it's expanded, and it's not just because of that one event. I also think that there are some women in the game now that are just good. Like, well, I don't know. I don't want to give away sleepers and stuff like that, but whatever. Listen, it is what it is. I'm going to give one away.
You'd ask people on this show, also on your tweets a lot, to use the hashtag WSOP Fantasy to sort of tell people about their schedules, because you know, you've said all along your goal is to make everything as public as possible, so that the goal is not like just texting everybody you can think of and trying to get all this inside information. Just throw it out there in public and let the best drafters make the decision with all the information. But I haven't seen a ton of usage of this. Like I would have thought, with, you know, your reach, like everybody's putting their schedule on hashtag WSOP Fantasy, and I haven't seen all that information yet. So it seems like there's still maybe a lot of unknowns.
The only way that was really going to work is if I was eyeballing Twitter and like I see one and then I reply with hashtag WSOP Fantasy, because I don't know, just people don't think about it. You know, they don't put it on. That's fine. But all right, I'm going to give you
back to your sleeper. I want to hear the sleeper. Come on.
Well, one is not really a sleeper. You know, Kristen Fox, and she's amazing. She's already a high stakes player and plays everything. Right? But the sleeper, and I played with her a little bit at Poker Go Studio recently, and I can't remember the last time I played with somebody that is like just an animal. Okay, like she plays like an animal. I remember playing with her, and I think for the first 3 hours, she never turned her cards up. She never had to show her damn hand. You know, like the red line people talk about, like the red line in you know, when you're tracking results is how many hands do you win without showdown. Her red line was just mashing people. She was 3-betting, 4-betting, bomb, bomb, bomb. Then she gets, Moreno, Andrew, to just call it off with ace queen, and he's dead. And finally she showed her hand, you know, and it was ace king, right? But it's like, she's super aggro, you know, and I think like, you know, in those bigger fields, you know, with maybe some of the field bonuses, I feel like she's the type of player that will amass big stacks. Okay. And that's valuable. Like just the fact that you can do that. Now, hanging on to the big stack, that's a different story. Because, you know, when you play like an animal, you live and die by the sword. So, but the point is, I think she'll put herself in situations where she'll have opportunities to, you know, to strike gold.
And because of the depth of the draft, it is worth.
Who is it?
Well, I don't think she's
Cherish Andrews. Oh, didn't I say it?
No, you didn't. But I actually did think it was probably her when you said when I thought you weren't revealing it away, but I actually thought it was Cherish Andrews.
Oh my god,
and she's playing a bunch too.
Anything? Yeah, no, she definitely like I said, I actually text her this privately. Said I can't play like her. Like I'm just impressed. I watch it and I'm like, wow, that's great. You know, it's fun to watch. But you got to know like what worked for you and doesn't work for me. But I admire and respect it. You know, it's not something that anytime I try doing that shit, I'm like, what? Oops.
So do you think she knows where she's at all the time, or do you think she's just like relying on pure aggro? Like, is she, you know, she got a good handle on where she's at?
I think so. Yeah, I think she's good at reading situations, and she's got the guts to you know, take advantage of the situations. Right? She has no fear. Right? And that's like that in itself, when you play tournaments, if you have like some sense of understanding, just being that person that's not afraid to put it in, and let's say like everyone else kind of is, you have an implicit advantage right away, right? And then you create this image of being, you know, the mad person. And then when you have a hand, like the Adamo factor, you know, people like, what are you going to do? Like this guy bet 3x pot, you'll top pair. Like, I don't fucking know. Like, you know, he puts you in tough spots. And she does too. I couldn't believe it because I was paying attention. I hadn't played with her and I wanted to see what she's turning over. And I'm sitting there for 3 hours. And then she had, like, we start with 150K. She's got like 800K. She's chip leader. She's chip leader of the damn tournament. Okay. And she didn't turn over a hand. I'm saying, I've never seen this before. That's amazing. And we're just relentless. You know, like every spot that was there to take, she took it. And it's tough to play against, you know? So I feel like, you know, in the, what do you call it? In the fields you see at the World Series of Poker, that's sort of like bull run, you know, if she knows how to get away, of course, which is important. Like when she gets resistance and things like that. But yeah, no, I was just impressed with stylistically. Like she came into that studio and she was the most aggressive player in the tournament, you know, and this is talking about people who play there on the regular.
I want to ask a question because we just finished talking about Kristen Foxen and we just finished talking about Sharon Andrews, two no limit specialists. How obviously the best player, the highest dollar players are going to be the players who play the big no limit and also all the 10K mixed because, you know, you pick up a lot of points that way in the smaller fields. The depth of the, you know, you talked about 20 teams, that's 160 players. The depth of this is such that you're going to get a lot more no limit specialist draft this year. Give me a sense of like how far into the down the money do we go before we get kind of start getting guys who play only no limit, guys or girls who only play no limit? Like are they going to go for $15? How much do guys like that go for?
Depends which ones and what stakes they play, right? But so even last year, I think like the schedules evolved and changed so that we didn't have like a robust high stakes no limit structure before. Now there's a bunch of like high stakes PLO, high stakes no limit. So those players that, you know, no limit players didn't have any value before that. Now the high stakes players do, right? Now the question is, what about the low stakes guys? What about the, you know, the low limit grinders? They have value now too for two reasons. Obviously, it's an expanded field. There's going to be more people drafted, which makes David Baker's job of bonus players even more difficult to find them. But in addition, those events, like if you're trying to pick a player for $1 or $2 as a flyer, they have big opportunities for huge field bonuses, right? Now, the thing about it is like winning a $1,500 milli maker, you don't get a lot of points for first, but you get a shit ton of points for the field bonus. So those players all of a sudden, you know, then you wonder, okay, are those players like that are going to play a full no limit schedule like that? Are they more valuable than a quote unquote, sorry, Alan Kessler, right? Who will play mixed and will play, you know, some of that stuff, but like, you know, maybe he doesn't close as well or whatever, but he's been winning lately. Alan,
you can buy him at no markup on
no markup on Poker Stake. There you go. But no, I definitely think like on my list, I have 5 tiers. I have a spreadsheet, 5 tiers. Tier 1 is generally types of players that you mentioned. That'll be, you know, combination players that are playing a little bit of everything. Then tier 2 maybe some specialists. Tier 3, some very good PLO specialists, different things. Tier 4 is where the brunt of my picks are. Like a lot of tier 4 guys, which is just people that I'm playing, you know, 25, 30 events, but I'll also be playing other properties, stuff like that. Like those players still have value now. And then I've got, you know, my tier 5s, which are players that nobody else will have on their radar that I think I can get for $1.
Where is Chainsaw? What tier is Chainsaw? Double digits? Are we talking tier 12, 15?
I'm not going to lie. Sorry, Chainsaw, but you're not on my list. Just, he doesn't fit the mold of the type of guy that I'm attacking.
Not going for $1. Will somebody draft Chainsaw for $1? Yes or no?
There's a lot of, if there's a player, there's several players that are not on my list that are really good, by the way. So there's players that like, I know I'm not going to draft. So I put them on what I call a throwout list, right? So those are a throwout list or guys I don't want, but I'd like to throw their name out so that other people spend their money so that, you know, I can just flush it out. And that way, maybe I can get my guys a little bit cheaper or something like that. So let's say, for example, Phil Hellman, I probably won't draft him because other people will, and they'll pay a lot for him, right? And he's worth a lot, but I won't pick him probably because it doesn't work with my strategy. So he'll be on my throwout list. Like if I was first, I would say, you know, well, I'm not picking myself either, or Sean Deep. I'm not taking any of those 3. So those are the names I would throw out and get people to spend.
So it sounds like you're not going stars and scrubs. You're going to go value, sort of mid value most of the way.
Well, last year I went heavily mid-value. I had a lot of $20, $30, $20 players. And then I had like one Nick Schulman at 79 or something like that was my highest bid.
And if it weren't for Corey Alder winning the thing.
Yeah, I know. No, the strategy worked. I think this year it's going to be more difficult to do that. And the stars and scrubs probably works better simply because now, last year there's like, whatever, not that many people bidding against me, but now there's like 20 teams. So you'll look at a name that's going for 20 and they're like, oh, there's a couple more people. Every player basically that you think you want, now there's more opportunity that other people also want.
Yeah. There's more growth in the pool of competitors than there is growth in the pool of actual players.
Like I got 3 players that were not even targets of mine for 2025 that I wasn't even planning on adding, but they're like definitely I thought worth more than that. So that's how I filled out my team. And people looked at my team and they all felt like I had the chalk. And I did great. I won all the side bets except for one, obviously. And it was my first year really like putting together a good team. And I still fucked up because I had, and that no disrespect, but like Dan Shack wasn't on my list of guys to pick, but he bid 4 on himself. And I was like, well, he's worth more than 4. Like I felt like he should be worth 10 to 15. So I said 5 just to get the bidding going. And then Dan's like, and he was there. He's like, I'm out. Fuck. Okay. All right. We'll go Dan Shack. Right now I'm all of a sudden go down Shack. But that's the danger, especially with 20 teams of like, in the past, you try to push people because they'll pay more. But now you might get stuck with those people and that really screws up your game plan. And the one rule that I have this year, and I started a couple of years ago, is I will not nominate or bid on a player that I have not spoken to because I don't know their schedule. So for example, there's a couple guys in Europe that I never got a hold of. I don't know. And I know they're going to get drafted. But if I hear, oh my God, he's only going for 12, I'm not going to just go 13. Because if he's only going for 12, I assume the people that know them well they know that there's a reason he's only going for 12, right?
Yep.
Like if Corey this year,
I always thought, sorry, I just want to quickly say, I always thought the field, the number of teams in the 25K fantasy, always it was low because there was so much unknown information, right? Like if you're having a NHL draft and pool, you're going to get a lot of people. The information's basically finite. But if you're doing it in poker, we just don't know all of this information. So you're going to put up 25K and somebody's going to know a couple of crushers. You're going to get them for $1 because they're the only ones that know about it. I think those days are.
I think here's the thing, right? And this is what we want. And a lot of people like look at the scoring system and they're like, oh, that's not fair because it's like too variance heavy. I'm like, I want variance. I want luck to be involved. We know this. When you think of games that work, strategy games, right? Chess is a difficult sell to people because chess is just, if you're better than me, you just win every time. It's not that fun, right? Higher variance games that actually have some luck like this one brings in more people. Like even if you don't draft the perfect team, like Maria's team, she picked John Hennigan, her last pick. He didn't play. So she had 7 players. She happened to catch lightning in a bottle with Poirier, right? And and they got him for like $2 or something like that. So everyone can win, unless you draft a really, really bad team. But everyone feels like they have a shot. Also, I do believe that 25K sounds like a lot of money, and it is, but it's for the entire summer, right? There's a whole bunch of high stakes players. A lot of teams, what they'll do is they'll chop. So they'll go like, half. You see the Donnie Peters team and the Brennings, they sell on poker stake. So fans have an opportunity to buy. But ultimately, these are, it's mostly for the fun of it. But there's always like a bunch of side bets. It's a great sweat for the summer. And what's been born out of that is Mark Gregorich has the exact same format for 2,500. Normally he does it the day before. Now he's doing it the day after because of scheduling issue. And then we have the David Baker. So you guys at home, you can like put together after you see the value. You're like, oh my God, this guy went for 4. I'm going to pick him. And you make your own team. And there's tons of those. You can put in as many as you want. And for $500, you get in on another fun prize. So it's really grown. The guy, but I want to shout out to the guy who does the 25K fantasy website. He is unbelievable. Like he doesn't have to do this. He does this because he enjoys it. He's not paid to do this. I typically ask for the people that win to tip him because, he runs the site and he gets the updates up so fast. Like they're there. The only struggles he ever has, and it's not his fault, is getting the online results up because that has to go through the World Series of Poker. They have to identify who's who, but it's not real name. And that takes sometimes 4 or 5 days. But otherwise, he updates the site and takes feedback and takes it very seriously. And, it's great to have him because he helps it run. And I think for a lot of people, they go to the site every day and they check the scores and see how they're doing. And
we were going to...
One other thing about this league that I'll say that I really think it's created so much buzz for the World Series of Poker, genuinely so, because you won't believe how many people want to be drafted. I have people reach out to me and say, please, I'm going to be doing good. Take me for $1. Like real pros. They want to be part of this thing, right? And then the other aspect that's really interesting to me is, let's say, for example, someone drafts Terrence, right? Terrence now feels like, man, you know what? All right, I'm going to do my best for you. So now Terrence was going to play 12 events. Now Terrence plays 20 because he's won. He doesn't want to, he doesn't want to let them down. There is that genuine added pressure from, on players who they're like, all right, you showed faith in me. I'm gonna play more tournaments. So I'm absolutely certain that the fantasy draft has increased, the revenue for the World Series because we get a whole bunch more people playing events. I'm certain of that. It's not even debatable.
Not to mention sometimes people even get partially backed when they're on their teams. I don't think I'd play extra events if somebody picked me, but I try not to punt on the bubble as hard as I usually do.
You would though. What if you just would? You say no, but like if one of your buddies and he's in there, he's like, come on, he'll egg you on. He's like, come on, Terrence, you can play triple draw. Let's go. It's a 10K, but you'd feel motivated to. You'd feel like you'd want to.
No, it's true. It's probably true. There's always a bit of ego in every poker player, even as much as poker players love to say they don't have any.
Well, no,
live streaming on Poker Go, right? Sunday night? Sunday night?
Yeah, it'll be on Poker Go. You can watch it for free on YouTube. And like I said, you got people at home. It's almost like, the NFL draft where people are sitting at home and they're like, oh, here comes my name. Come on, pick me. And they want to hear what they go for. So then there's some ego battles of like, I went for fucking $3. Do they know who I am? I'll tell you, there's one guy. He's a really good player, and I'm not going to name him because he's on my list. 1 year, he went for $3, and he was so freaking offended. Because he's like, he's legit, a really good player, and was playing a decent schedule. And he went for $3, and he was like annoyed as hell, right? He's like, I'll show them, And he ended up having like the third highest total, on the year.
Oh, wow,
awesome,
nice. So we were going to finish up with the World Series schedule. We'd gone through it, but we're running short on time. So the only event that we're really going to talk about in this week that we've got left is Monday, July 3rd, because that's the $10,000 main event, Flight A, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, also Flight B, C, and D. 8,700 is the most has ever played in the World Series of Poker main event, the Jamie Gold year. We've got the return of after Black Friday and all the different things that happened with online poker in the U.S., of course, our numbers plummeted because we didn't have those online qualifiers. Well, guess what? They're back. GG is sending, I want to say, 500 or 600 people themselves. We're going to have a large number, I think. Poker's back, live poker's back, COVID's over. People want to get out and mix it up. And it's my belief, and I think everybody around the poker world sort of feels that this year is going to beat the Jamie Gold year or at least be right up there in the high 8,000s. Terrence, I want you to go out on a limb here and tell me exactly how many people are going to play the main event this year.
I got the under. I still think it's hard to get to 87.73, which is the number. So I'm going to get like 8,100.
8,100. Roscoe, what are you going to go with?
9,100, Bob.
91 to 101, Bob. I'm going to go 93.20. That's going to be my number. Daniel, what's going to happen here?
Okay, I'm not going to play the Price is Right game thing, but because I have a number in mind and I've been saying it. So the last one when Jamie Gold won was 8,773 players, right? I'm going to say 200 more than that. I'm going with 8,973 players.
Right, I'm the only one with the under on Jamie Gold here.
You're way under.
Makes me feel like I got the square side, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, and at those numbers, and in most of the numbers other than Terrence's, we're going to see a $10 million first prize, right?
I think we might see, depending on how they do. I can't remember, but I know there was talk of like manipulating the payout structure so that it was the biggest ever. I'm not sure that's what they ended up doing. I'm not sure, but I know
that'd have to be 10 million and one.
Yeah,
that would be the Price is Right approach.
Jamie won 12 million. Jamie Gold won 12 million.
Oh, did he? Okay, yeah, no, yeah, it was Mark 10. Yeah, that's right.
There you go.
One quick main event question, because I feel like everybody asks this every year, and I know, Daniel, this is not something you give a lot of thought to, but you have played the main event many, many times in a row. Everybody always says, what's the best day to play the main event? What's the softest field? And I know you don't care, you're just going to play whatever fits your schedule, but you've probably played them all. Do you have an opinion? Just for reference, it's the 3rd to the 6th this year, which of course includes the 4th of July, which is holiday. That'll be Flight B. Do you have opinions based on your experience or people that you talk to on what's the day to play the main event? Because everybody loves this question.
there are a lot of variables at stake, right? Really depends on who you are and what you're doing. So someone like me, for example, I'm going to be playing whatever event is leading up to it. So, I'll be playing another tournament on day 1A still, on day 2 or 3.
But if you're not you, if you're just some guy.
Well, I'm going to get to that. Yeah. I'll formulate it specifically. So for me, what I look to, which is another aspect, is I want to make sure that I have day offs in between. So for example, day 2s, they're separate, but then the very next day you play day 3. But if you're in the second day 2, that means you play all day 2 and then all day 3. If you played the first day 2, now you get a day off in between day 2 and day 3. So I think like day offs are worthwhile. So that would be like I think 1B and C, or A, B, and C go together, and then D is the fourth. D is the one that gets like the biggest numbers. Most pros play day 1D, but also just more amateurs too. So proportionally, it's probably, the best day in that regard. If you're an average Joe, to shorten your trip, it probably makes sense for you to show up, day 1C day and then just play day 1D, play like the very last one. Day 1A and day 1B, I've never really gone that route. Like, I just feel like I need a little break, before that. But I don't know that like I've ever seen, honestly, a 1A or a 1B that's been like really juicy. I don't think you get like, especially, I don't know if July 4th is a day 1B.
Yeah, 4th is B.
So see, July 4th is a tricky one, right? It's kind of unfortunate that it falls on that day. It's like, there's a whole bunch of people that may have played that day that are not, because it's July 4th. I mean, I don't care. I'm Canadian, but I'm also American.
Yeah. It does feel very grinder heavy thing to do is to play on the 4th. But what you say about the rest day, I think that's how I always, when I played the main event, chose it. I would always choose that at least one off day, because you don't want to have to play day 2 and then day 3 and then potentially 4, 5, 6, 7 and not have that rest day, because that rest day that you had between day 2 and day 3 could end up paying dividends on day 4 and day 5.
Yeah. All right, moving on. There was an issue that came up on Twitter this week, and Josh Aria posted a video of a player in a poker tournament he was accused of using real-time assistance on his phone in a hand during a tournament. And the player next to him was kind of yelling and screaming at him. I can see in your sunglasses that you're using these mid-hand. And there was a lot of discussion on what should happen to this player. I think the player, I want to say, from what I can read by the tweets, denied it and said he was doing it between hands. So there's this issue with solvers now at the table and people using them, especially heading into the World Series, right? And I wanted to get your take. Terrence, you went first last time. Daniel, why don't you go first here with your take on, did you watch the video? And what do you think of calling people out here, and how impossible is it to monitor people's cell phones in the middle of live poker tournaments?
So I was on the space. I've been in the Twitter spaces here and there, and I was on the space when he came on to sort of defend himself and explain the situation, things like that. And I essentially, backed him, if you will, because I feel like he's unfairly being persecuted for something that I see quite commonly in tournaments that I play, where people will have their phone up and they're looking at ranges. They're like looking at, all right, what I'm doing here and there. Now there are tools that are more complex than that, like the Wizard, where you can actually punch in the stacks behind you. So the way that I look at this question is this, right? Now, on one side, is it fine to play a hand and for me to text you guys, go, hey, Terrence, Adam, what would you have done with this? Can you solve it for me? Right? I remember like a group of players on WhatsApp, that's what they were doing before, they had the apps. They would literally post the hand on their WhatsApp and they would send it to a guy who's on a computer. They would give them the solve and they would all discuss it, right? And I have no issue with this. I really don't. Like, this is studying hands that already happened, right? So that's one way in which you can use it. The second way would be in real time when you're actually making a decision. That is clearly out of bounds, right? The third kind is the one that I think is a problem, but it's very difficult to enforce. And that's simply this. You're under the gun +1. You fold your hand. You're under the gun very next hand, okay? You have 12 bigs. You can literally punch in the stats on the table and literally look at exactly what you should do on the very next hand. And anytime a tool will help you make a decision, the future decision, whether it's during the hand or on the very next hand, I think that's a problem. But again, you're not going to see any organizers want to go down this path of saying we're going to police this, because here's the problem, right? What are you going to, like, we have privacy laws. What are you going to say? Hey, Adam, let me see your phone? No, fuck you. You're not going to see my phone, right? So it's ultimately it comes down to one of these things where I think it's a little bit like jaywalking, right? Jaywalking is illegal. You're not allowed to jaywalk. But if you jaywalk, what happens? Nothing, right? You don't actually get a ticket, but you're not allowed to do it because it's legal. You shouldn't be allowed to do it, but it's not really enforced. So I think like at the very least, making a statement. And then if like somebody's so obviously and egregiously doing it and you actually see, and you get a group of people that say so, maybe this guy gets a warning and maybe he is banned if he's continuing to do it. And, word of mouth comes around that they are doing that. But again, it's a difficult subject. I sort of push back a little bit on, Berkey claiming that like there's no advantage. That's not true. There's no issue with, like I said, looking at hands that happened already. But if you were like looking up a spot that you're going to be in the very next deal, and now the actual answer, if you will, like why allow anyone to do that, right?
Darren,
yeah.
Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Okay, so I agree and I disagree. I agree fully on the spots that this particular situation. I don't believe that this guy was looking up a spot that he was actually playing in while he was playing with it. And I think a lot of people who saw Josh's tweet and didn't really examine and didn't look through carefully thought that's what was happening. They thought that this guy's in a hand, literally looking at his phone, being like, "Oh, I'm supposed to raise 34% of the time here." That's not what happened. At least my understanding is that's not what this happened. I don't even think the guy who was getting in the altercation with him accused him of doing this specific thing. We all agree that's wrong, that's illegal, that's RTA, can't do that. We all also simultaneously sort of agree that looking up a solve of some hand that happened way in the past is fine. In my day, if such a thing existed, like in my day, I come from the old school sort of like, you don't let people know that you have an edge and blah, 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 and keep it yourself and don't tap on the glass and all this kind of stuff. So we get to the point of what Daniel's talking about. And this is the real debate that we should be having. And it's a real debate, which is if I'm under the gun +1 and I just fold my hand pre-flop and then there's stuff happening on the flop, I know next hand I'm under the gun. I have 14 and a half big blinds. I have this many orbits and the stack sizes are this. Should I be allowed to do that and look and say like, okay, so the minimum hand I'm supposed to shove here is pocket sixes, half of my ace 7 suited, king 9 suited, blah, blah, blah. Like, is that allowed? And, Daniel's argument is sort of like, we don't really want to do that, I think, right? Like, you sort of said like jaywalking, you don't want everybody to jaywalk, but also there's probably not serious penalties. I'll disagree slightly on this point. And I'll say that I think for, especially this tournament was a 5K. I think everybody knows that these apps and these things exist when they're playing a 5K tournament. I don't think you should be cavalier about it and just kind of look at your phone and do it in a very obvious way. But I actually take the point of view that it probably helps shrink the gap between pros and recreational players, because I think at this point, even the recreational players know that these things exist out there, and it's almost and to the extent that they don't, it's almost better that they're made aware of it. And the fact is, if you take your average pro playing a 5K, he knows pretty close what hands he's supposed to open shove with when he's a short stack, in middle position. Like he knows he's going to be off by a little bit, but they largely know. Whereas the recreational player might be wildly off. And I think actually, because it is an impossible thing to police, and Daniel's already brought up the reasons why we can't really police all this stuff all the time. What if the guy takes 5 steps away from the table to look up the tables? Is that okay? Well, then no. What are we going to do? Every time a guy walks away from the table with his phone, the tournament director is going to see what he's looking at. Like, no, none of these are reasonable solutions. So I think I don't think it's a disaster. Like, I think it's actually not a bad thing for this to be allowed and this to be okay and acceptable. And this is a very different point of view than the Terrence would have had 15 years ago when I was playing poker for a living. Because like I said, in my day and in your guys' day, you didn't behave like that. You tried to create a we're all gambling here, boys kind of environment. You didn't try to give the idea that poker is this intensely strategic, mathematical, analyzed game. So that's sort of my thought on it. I think it actually, to some extent, levels the playing field, to be honest.
So 2 things on that. Number 1, I think the only way that you could effectively stop this from happening is a solution that doesn't work, and that is to take everybody's phone.
Yeah,
that's not
going to happen.
Feasible. You have guys like Dan Shack, who has to do business and he needs to have his phone. You have other people who have children. You can't be away from their phone for an entire 2-hour blocks and periods, right? So that's not really feasible. But then sort of on the other question, I'm not so sure. I understand where you're going with the idea that like, so bad players will now have a decent idea of what to do. But I genuinely think typically these tools, how to interpret them is something that top pros will do better than Rex or average players. So like an absolute like crusher will have a better understanding of how to interpret the information. Now, in this example you gave, that's the most simplistic one, right? You're just under the gun, like that you're under the gun and there's not going to be a race.
Should you shove or should you not shove?
Well, right. But like, so imagine a more sophisticated player who's in the cutoff. Okay.
Right.
He's not in the under, he's in the cutoff. And now he can, go a step further and be like, all right, against open raises from here, there, and there, I can just 3-bet jam these sizes, et cetera, depending on which player does. Like there are much more complex solutions.
They're much more complex, but they will also have studied the spot. If your job is playing poker, then you're going to have a decent idea of when these early position guys open, what you can shove over the top.
But the big edge and the big factor is very, very difficult to study is the ICM implications of these spots based on stack size, right? It's so hard to know. Like, okay, this player has 3 big blinds and they're in the small blind, right? So how much does that affect my calling range versus if he had 5 big blinds, right? Do you know? I don't fucking know. Do you know how to even calculate that? That is incredibly hard work. And you're right that, the people will study these spots. But generally speaking, when you allow for tools that help people, the smartest people are going to get the most out of those tools in a general perspective. But like I said, for the most simplistic ones, 100%, like have a snap shove up and be like, all right, well, simple. But again, I think it's an unfortunate thing. And one thing I think we all agree on is like, if you are going to do this shit, don't do this fucking openly at the table where everybody can see, right? Like go walk away, do whatever. Again, I wish it wasn't a thing and I wish people didn't do it. And there was a debate on the space. Berkey was saying it's not really a big deal. It's not a big edge. But then Rob Kuhn, he says like, it's huge. It's like making a half a big line mistake in these ICM spots is worth a lot of money, according to him. So you have 2 camps who'd have different views on it. I think the bottom line is it shouldn't really matter how much of an advantage it is, whether it increases your edge 5% or 50%. Question is, do we allow it or not? And if we're not, how do we stop it? And I don't think we can.
That's the real hard part is, we can all decide that this is bad for the game or whatever, but until we have some realistic way of enforcing it, I don't know how you do that.
Well, like I said, the only way, realistically, unless we thought about this, like, even if you took people's phones away, like for streams, which is what they do sometimes, people still go in between hands and can go to their phone. So it's not like that stops anything. All it does is it just makes the guy do the solve over in the corner rather than at the table. So the only option is like literally.
At least that takes away the real time ones, though, right? That takes away a large majority.
Not really, like these no limit hands late in tournaments, they take forever, right? Like
you fold your hand, you get up, go grab your phone, you punch it in. Mm-hmm. It's 5 steps over to the side.
Yeah, but you folded your hand.
I would never support the idea of taking electronics away because it would destroy the numbers. You would hurt specifically the exact kind of players that we want playing, people that have a business or a family.
Yeah. All right. So we're bumping up against the hour. 2 quick shoutouts. One, Alex McKenzie, who tweeted at us. He's a poker dealer. He's taking his first dive into the Casino Employees Union, huge tournament. He's probably not a member of a union if he's a poker dealer. Good luck to Alex. And the second one is to Amanda Negreanu, who is being encouraged to play.
She's playing the PPC, right?
No, she's not being encouraged. Let's get it straight. She's being ordered.
I tried to use the word nicely.
In our household, it's order and force. Okay, so I said,
my wife
to play a tournament, right? And the question is, which one should I force her to play? And she replied with a tweet saying, in the little GIF, it says, it's cute that he thinks there's rules, right? Right. But we have that banter amongst each other. Like we can talk that way. We're obviously joking with each other. I mean, I'm obviously not ordering or forcing, but I did that to just annoy people. I think it worked. It definitely.
Was she going to play the main, or what's she going to play?
I don't know. Like the ladies' events, definitely, probably not. She said the last time she played, she had a bad experience. She said she felt like they were being catty and whatever. And there's probably because back then, like she was, popular in poker, and like a lot of the pros would come and talk to her, be like, hey, how's it going, or whatever. So I think some of the other women were like standoffish to her as a result or whatnot. But I think that the key thing to get her, just to get the itch to want to play, is to get her to play some online a little bit, right? But the one I think she should play is the mystery bounty. Because they're just bust somebody, just gamble, have fun, and the edge is smaller because who cares? And
could you imagine her poker Twitter explosion if she did the Matt Glantz and pulled to 1 million?
I mean, of all the people in the world, and I like Matt Glantz, of all the people in the world, like literally nobody was rooting for Matt Glantz other than Matt Glantz. Nobody's like, come on, Matt, you got this. You need this one. Nobody looked at that and thought, oh, great, Matt Glantz won.
I think my vote is for the 10K Raz. I think she should suffer as much as everybody else.
Yeah. I thought about that. I thought about teaching her triple draw or Raz because they're kind of somewhat simplistic, and I think she'd enjoy them, and I think it'd be fun. But she knows Hold'em, so
put her in the 250.
She hasn't played in a very long time. Like she played several years ago an online World Series event. It was like I came up to her and she was so uncomfortable with me watching, right? And I wasn't telling her what to do. She's like, I don't know. What do I do? Am I min raising? I don't know. Small ball? Like, what? Do we still small ball? I don't know what's going on. Like, I used to talk. I still do, like, talk strategy with her a little bit, but it's more of like me. It's not her. It's not a back and forth. Right? I'm explaining concepts to her and to her. And the cool thing about having Amanda in my corner is like I come home from the World Series of Poker and I can explain it to her and she understands it, right? So people wonder, like, if you're married, is it better to be in your professional poker player? Are you better off with somebody who understands it or not? I like the fact that she understands it enough. Like, she's not a diehard, she's not insolved, whatever. But when I get home and I explain what happened and my thought process, she's interested and she remembers and she gets it. So that's kind of cool. I like that.
I got lucky. I got the same. I got one that understands poker and MMA. So I got lucky twice.
And golf. If you ever pick up golf, she understands golf.
Keep trying.
All right. So that's going to do it. Daniel, get your grind on. Kick ass. We'll be pulling for you here. We'll be doing podcasts. Terrence, you're going to sprinkle a little cash down there, I'm sure, too, as well. I might dip my nose down there and see if I can't find my way into a tournament or two as well.
Let's do a live Vegas podcast.
Everybody out there who's playing, who's listening, go have a ball. This is Poker Players Fantasy Camp. Go have some fun playing tournaments and take some stuff down. Thanks to everybody for getting together one last time before the World Series of Poker. And thank you for listening. We will talk to you soon.
Not tilting is obviously better than tilting.
I agree.
Hi, David. All right, boys. Peace.
Yeah.